My name is William Cruz Mata, and my essay is called American Appetite, How the West Consumes Communist Propaganda. It seems to come to my attention that I see a lot of people and friends, especially people from different countries, that have been fed the same propaganda that is produced in the U.S. government as well as the CIA, playing a major role producing anti-communist propaganda, encouraging their own citizens to follow through blindly as if they were to follow through the other way around. It would be like a lamb to a slaughter. The use of propaganda began almost with the Cold War itself around 1945. As time uh, as time in the view followed, so did the public. Marvel making Captain America a commie snatcher, and movies such as James Bond encountering Soviet threats. I see it a lot. My friends who disagree with communism and making comments that it can't work whatsoever. My own mom thinking that communism is pure tyranny due to friends from Cuba, or misunderstood what the media is telling her, and more. What I would like to do is explain what exactly is communism in a simplified way, what exactly was the Cuban Revolution, as well as the Bolshevik Revolution, if I have time, and also bring up how propaganda affects the soul, not only revolving around communism, but just how propaganda is seen and how harmful it can be to us as a whole. Number one, what is communism? To many people's eyes, they see communism as a plague in red that traps people and gives no one freedom. A gigantic prison camp where everyone shares the same toothbrush, the same fork, the same clothes, where everyone's property is shared, where it is seen as equal. I see friends describing communism to be nothing but a dictatorship. My own mom telling me that Cubans suffer every day and only get a piece of bread to eat. Anti-communism spreads like propaganda on every single wall, making the hammer and sickle seen as a Nazi symbol. Nothing but tyranny, authoritarianism, dictatorship, and corruption. There are many kinds of people who oppose communism heavily, not just politically, but religiously, as well. Let's start with conservatives, the right, a bold and pure crimson that has been trying to keep its values as harshly as possible. Not all conservatives are like this, though, but that doesn't mean they don't have a vast reputation. Commentators such as Ben Shapiro and Charlie Kirk refer to communism as a radical left ideology due to rejecting capitalism and free markets. As the view of the left to be hostile, let's not forget about the amount of death capitalism brings on a daily basis, though. Slavery, colonialism, coups, climate collapse, etc. Capitalism thrives on murder and death. The real question here is, though, who benefits from it? The people up top, the billionaires, the bourgeoisie. It's not the single mothers who work multiple jobs trying to support their children. It's not the man who lives in a single-room apartment with their bills skyrocketing or necessities become inadequate. This is the kind of rhetoric right-wingers speak upon while it's happening to their own ideology. The accountability is absent. Why is it? Is it because they're too scared? Is it because of what they're told? Or is it because they just can't accept the truth? Many conservatives argue heavily on many subjects, yet they are never the victim. Friedrich Engels famously referred to these preventable deaths as social murder, a term that shows how capitalism creates conditions in which certain populations are systematically neglected, deprived, and ultimately destroyed. Today, Engels' critique is more relevant than ever, but I know what everyone is asking for. What is communism? Communism is where the workers control their own labor. Communism is where the workers unite to abolish the bourgeoisie. The hammer, symbolizing the industrial proletariat, the factory workers, while the sickle represents the hard-working farmers and peasants. They both come together and abolish both the bourgeoisie and private property. The main focus is to bring equality and cooperation. Among others, it might seem the other way around, but it's just what you're fed, being told to fear communism while being robbed by capitalists on a daily. A distinguishing feature of communism is not the abolition of property in general, but the abolition of bourgeois property. Number two, how does propaganda affect us all? And what can we do to make sure we're not being lied to? Now, to talk about propaganda as a whole, let's talk about other kinds of propaganda that has been used around history, homophobia, racism, sexism, rejection, xenophobia, etc. Why is this? And what's the difference? There is none. They all dehumanize humans as if they're nothing but objects. And because of this, this led to human rights abuses being normalized, giving immigrants low wages, women being seen as nothing but baby makers, queer people seen as a disease, and dehumanized and use people of race. Let's talk about communism for a second. Communism is seen as a threat because it challenges everything capitalism has: private property, exploitation, unequal wages, etc. From school to the news, from comics to pulp adventure movies, it was everywhere, especially during the age of the Cold War. But let's not just pick on communism specifically. Misogyny and sexism is something people like to pick up a lot, and even try to make it their own lifestyle. Misogyny is a very old thing that has been used religiously and sadistically. Um, you can argue women have been pressured and killed many times throughout history and have been stripped of their rights and still are to this day. Same with immigrants being killed because of what their skin color is or what they are. People building systems and manifestos trying to show how they are superior while everyone is at the bottom. What builds this anger? What builds allegiance or hatred? Cost masculinity. Something that has been a thing for a while and still is. Misogynistic men, including themselves. These are deranged people who believe that they can't get a girlfriend, regardless of how hard they try. They blame women because their harassment doesn't come to their liking. But most of all, they don't see women as people. They see them as objects, building blocks to create whatever their mind wants. These men are parasites glowing and spreading like an unpreventable virus. Many of these men need to be criminals, mass shooters, rapists, and sometimes they even target women of ethnicity, sexuality, etc. And these men spread their propaganda heavily, turning antisocial men into outcasts. This kind of bigotry is spreading like a whirlwind, and it's not just misogyny, but also homophobia and racism. This is something that I've seen a few people have arguments against, but yet they are never really to catch an eye. Usually, from supremacist, racist, sexist, homophobic wastes of skin, these are people. They're threats. They try to smother rhetoric and propaganda against other views, sexualities, races. So, how do we make sure we're not being lied to? We see who's being profited and benefited. We see who's the speaker behind these horrific words. We talk, we read, and make sure what we're being told is being lied to. See what workers, people, color colonies, women, queer people, etc. For example, let's say the U.S. says socialism never works. But is this claim true? No. Research is where the truth comes in. Embargoes, sanctions, foreign interventions, all these things I have named destabilize countries. And what next? They blame it on an ideology. Another thing that I would like to add is that propaganda exists for many reasons. Propaganda could also be a message to inspire people to see or do things that can be true. But most chaotic propaganda thrives due to systems not surviving honest through means. Misogyny, racism, xenophobia, homophobia, and anti-communism are random things that just come by. It supports and disarms working classes and people as a whole. The cure isn't being knowledgeable and knowing what's better. It is being aware of what's the truth and resisting. Number 3, the Bolshevik Revolution, Vladimir Lenin, and USSR under Stalin. I would like to grasp on what exactly led to the Soviet Union, and also the people who led it before 1917 in Russia. There were horrendous living conditions, long stressful hours, and when World War I happened, things went for a darker turn. The economy collapsed, millions died, including college students and many more. The public was fed up. They despised the government and what it was doing to them. This led to the Bolshevik Revolution, led by a man named Vladimir Lenin. But first, Lenin was 17 when his 21-year-old brother was executed by the Tsar Alexander III. Due to him opposing the government, this event radicalized Lenin heavily. This didn't just only tell him that the system wasn't just unfair, but it would respond with forward violence if anyone were to try to challenge it. He became a communist and studied Marxism and argued that the workers make up the wealth by the capitalist profit of initially robbing them the already robbed, leaving a clear absence of equality. This proved his point. Workers didn't just need better wages, they needed power. Lenin saw Russia as a ticking time bomb. If he didn't cut the red wire soon, it will explode. The Tsar's ruling was a leech, sucking off the workers' protected the rich like they were the last of their kind. Lenin became a vox populi of the revolution. His words weren't just theory, it was a sense of survival. Later, the Bolsheviks took power and executed the Tsar, including its family, pulled Russia out of World War I to avoid more death and war, gave land to the poor and peasants, and finally put factories into control. This was the first time when people gained power instead of being the main focus in a tale of gore. Lenin proved the workers were the main to fear, not the government. Proved the rich were greedy and threw others under the bus. But let's not forget the cons that came out of this revolution. Russia eventually fell into a civil war due to the old world values that were trying to revert back to the country it was before. Democracy shortened at the start of the revolution due to risks of collapsing, but indeed came with real serious causes. These crimes weren't caused by chaotic ego and ideas, but instead caused by many things, constant attacks and invasions from different powers and enemies, and creating a new world from the remnants of an older one. But other than the Bolsheviks and Lenin, something formed later. From 1918 to 1921, the Civil War Russia fell into was structured by the Red Army, the workers and the peasants, while the White Army, being the opposing side, also being supported by the United States, Great Britain, and France, as well as them being the Tsar's community. After the Red Army claimed victory, many socialist republics come together to unite and forge the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. And Lenin was ultimately the union's first leader, ending feudalism, expanded literacy and education, legalized abortion, and gave equality to women heavily, decriminalized homosexuality by removing Storrs law. In fact, the USSR was one of the first countries to legalize abortion and remove these horrific laws, and focused heavily on the people until 1924. Lenin tragically passed away at the age of 53. After this tragedy, a new leader would arise. That person in particular was Joseph Stalin. Under Stalin's ruling, the Union quickly industrialized, political repression increased heavily. It was also strong, growing fast, but left harshness inside. Around 1941, the Union entered into World War II, with the Third Reich invading the Eastern Front. Hitler smashed heavily into the Union, but was humiliated in the most horrific way possible. Initially, the Red Army closed heavily on Germany during the final days of World War II. Joseph Stalin gave universal education, rapid industrial growth, housing, healthcare, anti-imperialism, as well as challenging Western capitalism. But this doesn't mean he didn't do any bad. There was too much repression, shortages, insufficiency, and more. The Soviet Union saved its health, but it was rough and hard to live on. The failures came from many things, not workers being in power. And soon the Union was dissolved from the Cold War. Propaganda, militarism, constant capitalist threats, and sanctions. It's hard to build more when you have to guard your door with a rifle. The arms race drained the system heavily, and money went to armory instead of needs, forcing the Union into something it never planned on wanting. The public wasn't fed up with socialism, but just how life was going. They were frustrated, and propaganda fed them full. People stopped believing, and eventually would lead to the unfortunate demise. It didn't fail because of the ideology. It failed because of political powers who wouldn't leave it alone, including leadership. Number 4, the Cuban Revolution. Cuba under Castro and Che Guevara symbolism. Cuba is another country that is seen to be corrupted by socialism, but you should really know what it is like way before communism came along. Cubans were suffering heavily. They were serving the rich while peasants went berserk, having to deal with the worst living conditions, zero freedom and death. While the sadists on top of Batista, a U.S.-backed dictator, he used his power for corruption, robbing workers for their own blood, brutality kept them quiet, elections were falsified, and all of their resources wasn't controlled by the people. It was controlled by some elite, including U.S. companies, not Cubans. Let's talk about college student who wanted to become a doctor and eventually became one of the most revolutionary and inspirational icons in the world, Ernesto Che Guevara. In his early 20s, Che and a friend Alberto were both university students who practiced medicine. Che believed medicine could change lives. Becoming revolutionary was completely irrelevant to him, never came along.
Since he and his friend were on break, they both went on a voyage trip and traveled Latin America to North America. He saw nothing but mutilation and brutality. He saw children rotting in their beds from preventable diseases. Workers paying in chump change while foreign companies took all of the above. There needed to be a change. He didn't believe capitalist corruption would be settled peacefully. The people needed to revolt. The government was controlled with violence, and the show revolution was an act of defense. Not till around 1955, Che meets someone named Fidel Castro. They both meet in Mexico City, and Castro takes on a plan to overthrow Batista and his ruling. They talk all night about how workers are struggling, mass imperialism, and nothing, giving dignity to an oppression. Che was signed immediately. He did it because if no one did nothing would get better. They later formed the Cuban Revolution from 1943 to 59. They fought hard, and honestly, it was impressive. Just imagine a small group of jungle warfare guerrillas battling in